Alrighty, welcome Rory to the show. Who is calling? I believe this is our fourth episode, fourth interview. Thank you for joining. We'll kick it off. Why don't you tell us who you are, what you do for work, where you're at, your background, things like that.
Sure. I'm Rory, and I do a number of different things for work, but I would say that the thing that kind of wraps it all together is that I try to create um, spaces and experiences and communities for people to be able to encounter the sacred in their life, and I do that partially as a pastor in the Lutheran Church in the ELCA denomination, and I work as a pastor of engagement at Prince of Peace Lutheran Church in Burnsville, which is a suburb of St. Paul in Minneapolis. Um, and Part of my work here is developing just kind of different sorts of ministry experiences that are meant to engage people in ways that normally church life doesn't. So things beyond kind of the regular Bible studies and weekend worship services. So we do a beer church, a trail church. We've done a dinner church. We're about to set up a tabletop gaming church experience, and there's lots of weird sort of faith mixed with community things. And part of that, the last one, mixing gaming and faith, has been a passion of mine for a number of years. And I've started a ministry called Roll for Joy, which mixes tabletop role playing games like Dungeons and Dragons and spiritual exploration. I've run a retreat annually for a number of years now where ministry leaders come together to play D&D and talk about this weird sort of spiritual leader work that we do called the Holy Rollers. And as part of that, I've been in a doctorate program in spiritual direction, exploring how tabletop role-playing games can be used as a tool for spiritual direction and being trained as a spiritual director. Someone who can kind of meet with people one-on-one or in a small group and outside of the context of any sort of religious tradition, and can just kind of provide enough of a space and a container for people to kind of go on their own spiritual journeys and kind of explore what's captivating to them about and what feels holy to them in their own lives. And so lots of different irons in the fire.
Yeah, super cool. Um, what? So, how did you get started with all this? Let's start. Yeah, let's start there.
Sure. So my journey into this was started as a kid, really, if I think about it. When I was growing up, my parents divorced when I was in elementary school, and there was a lot of contention back and forth. And One of the ways that I kind of found my own individual identity in the midst of that, kind of stepping out of that family system, was through participating in faith community. So it was something that was, became important for me in high school and middle school as just a place for me where I could be me, and kind of not in either household. It was like a safe third space for me. And in that, I had been not thinking about working as a spiritual leader or in ministry at all. And In school, I was kind of excelled at math and science, and had planned to like go and work in physics. I'd actually been accepted at the Air Force Academy, and was going to go study astrophysics at the Air Force Academy, and wanted to work for NASA. And at the same time as I was kind of exploring that as a kind of graduate school, college experience, I was invited to go on some retreats with our bishop in Nebraska, where I grew up. And in the context of those retreats, I learned about the work of a pastor and being a spiritual leader. And there was a way that it was a very, very different path, and one that felt fulfilling in a way that the other didn't. And I don't know, like it was part of me that was still undeveloped, that was like yearning to be more developed, even though I had been involved in faith as a kid. It was something that felt like there was just a lot more there to explore, and a lot more meaningful moments, and meaningful in the way that that is like real meaning, not just like having the prestige of being an officer in the military, or having kind of a guaranteed paycheck, even and not meaningful in that sort of way, but meaningful in kind of being with people in very meaningful moments in their lives, and helping other people make meaning in their lives. And so between those two paths, I ultimately decided to pursue this kind of spiritual leader path. And so I studied religion at Texas Christian University, and went to seminary in Chicago, and worked as a pastor in North Dakota, and now in Minnesota for the last 10 years or so.
Very cool. So, do you think a lot of this came from these activities helping you out in your youth, and you wanted to give back, or can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say. I don't know that it was ever like a give back sort of thing. It was more because I think there's this sense of like you receive, and you have a lot, and you feel like you have an abundance, and then you want to share that. There was, I think, some of that, but it was less about having something to share that other people needed to have, in that sort of like waterfall way of thinking about how God works in the world, that God blesses somebody, and they bless somebody else, and they bless somebody else. And rather, it was more what I've learned is it's more about that there is sacredness and holiness to all of life, and it's more about it's not that I have something that other people don't have. It's that we can, I can see it in other people, and that brings richness to me, and that help other people kind of unearth that in their own lives, and find the sacred that's already there.
What is that? How would you help someone understand what you're talking about? Particularly me.
Sure.
What's sacred? What, like, how could I find what's sacred?
Sure. Well, what's your background? What is your experience with spirituality and faith or sacredness? What's your autobiography?
Yeah, I realized I flipped the interview around on myself, huh? Well, what I mean is, how would you define sacred? How could someone, what would that do for someone's life if they found what's sacred?
I mean, I want you to answer that question. I think because that affects the answer. And I think it will help us unearth the answer together, because it's not something that I know and you don't.
Gotcha. Hmm.
So what is your experience with the sacred? Where have you experienced it, or what's your story?
Well, the I did promise myself I would keep that out of this. Um, but let me go ahead. I mean, I have a Christian upbringing, Lutheran, Missouri Synod, and um, I'd say I experienced the sacred, my own definition, very early on. Um, didn't know if I was crazy or not, type of thing, but was noticing God in every part of life. God is life. Everything's God.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so did that start to answer your question?
Sure. What helped? What was it like when you first experienced that, or what's an early memory about experiencing that?
Um, I guess what I would consider direct communication. So have you ever, and honestly, this is the reason why I started this show, sanity check. Have you ever, I guess, been sent any messages or direct guidance? Did you feel a presence, a tangible physical interaction with God ever?
I would say, I mean, I think there's a kind of experience that people can't easily explain with words. That I think a lot of people have. We call it a mystical experience, and it can be very difficult to parse the meaning out of that and to understand it. And that when you try to put it into words, it can feel a bit silly. Um, so uh, when I was in that kind of end of high school time, uh, specifically around the end of high school, I there were a couple experiences that I had that were um, just felt really clarifying in a way. I wouldn't say that there was ever like a specific voice or message, though I have had other people tell me about experiences that they've had where that's happened. Um, but one of them was I used to when a thunderstorm would roll in across the plains in Nebraska. It was something that would just electrify me. I'd love thunderstorms, big thunderstorms on warm nights, and I would go running in them actually. So my mom hated it, but I would take off and I'd go running barefoot through the rainstorm with the thunder cracking all around, and I was doing that one time, kind of running around on a trail by where I lived, and there was a break in the clouds, and the rain stopped for a moment, and the moon shone out, and kind of in the midst of the chaos of the thunderstorm going on all around, there was this moment of peace, just in tranquility, with the moon shining down and kind of filling the area with moonlight. And I was in like a field or a soccer field or something, and I remember just stopping and pausing and like drinking that moment in. And there's been something in that moment that felt just like things clicked together, like things made sense, and they make something to that there was in the midst of all this chaos, there is peace. There is something beyond it, uh, similar to the moon shining down through the thunderstorm. There is uh, this light and this love at the center of the universe, and that in the chaos of everything, that um, there is the promise of meaning to be found and purpose, in what can be a very sort of chaotic life. And so that was one experience that I don't know that I was able to put into words what that meant right away, but it was something that kind of shifted something in me. Um, and then there was another one where I was at home, I was alone, and in a great, I was really really angry. I remember being really angry. So my family had, my mom and my sister had left on a vacation. I had the house to myself, and I was really angry. I was dating this girl, and her ex-boyfriend was around, and I was gonna, there was just some tension. I was gonna go beat him up. He was bothering her, and there was this whole thing. And so I was stormed down into my room where I had like a punching bag. And on the way down, my room was in the basement. On the way down, I kind of passed through our kind of basement area, and we had this old school Nintendo, an old NES system, and it had been kind of put away. But as I was going down, the controllers were all pulled out, and there was the controllers kind of were arranged in a way that was the shape of a cross, and it at first it stopped me. It freaked me out. I was like, who did this? I didn't do it. It was, my family didn't do it. We had a cat, so maybe the cat did it. But there was just this like break. It immediately changed where I was at and changed his perception. And after like opening all the doors in the house and not finding anybody, I came back to it, and it was just kind of this strange holy space, which was there, and kind of didn't believe it, so I took a picture of it, and I have that picture in my office still. So here, let me find it. But that was one that was like, I suddenly wasn't gonna fight this guy anymore. I sort of received it as a confirmation of that I was in the right direction. But let's see if I have it. There it is. Oh yeah, there we go. Basement Nintendo cross. So there you go. So no words associated with that, no messages, but kind of this strange physical sign that showed up.
Yeah.
I can't make sense out of.
Very cool. Was that scary at all? I
Yeah,
mean, yeah.
yeah, it was. Like, yeah, because I said, like, I was like convinced somebody had broken into my house, or my friends were playing a prank on me, or something was. I went and searched every room of the house, every closet, because I was freaked out.
What was your prayer kind of habits, prayer life like then? I mean,
Yeah, I don't know that it was. I don't remember. I remember reading the Bible a decent amount. I remember being in prayer, not really having a strong like daily practice that I could say like I did this every day or was regular at. but uh, it wasn't unfamiliar to me. I think the one prayer that I kind of used a lot, that I will say that I do remember, is that in kind of that discernment piece of thinking, where do I go, what do I do after high school, like when I have that freedom and space, um, that there is there's a sense that I felt like I was gifted in lots of different ways, and that there were lots of different opportunities open to me, and that that I just kind of held all of those, and my prayer was just, commonly, God used me, and that was kind of the a lot of the content of that prayer.
God used you. So, are you in, like today? Let's fast forward to today. Do you consider yourself in constant communication?
Um, I don't. In my experience, that that isn't necessarily. Um, no, I mean not in the way of there being, like a clear voice. I think there is a sense of, that communicating with God and communicating with the divine is not, it's not like a direct conversation in my experience. There is, I think I think God works a lot more slowly,
Mm.
and that there are moments of, kind of inspiration. There are moments when it feels like there are things that clarify, and it's like I know almost intuitively like what the right thing to do is, or what the thing to do is in the moment. But I would say like some sort of verbal communication or language is something that in my experience. And so I'm in communication with God when I pay attention. Um, I think God is always trying to be in communication with all of us, but it's um, it's often through other people, that there are means to that communication, through community, and that's those discernings are then tested out in community, and so I think there's a holiness in a committee, honestly, in bringing it and sharing that experience, with other people, and hearing, seeing if that resonates spiritually with other people, because I believe that there's kind of one God who wants the best for all of us, and not, that we're not each following our own little, experience in different directions. I don't know if that answers the question. But.
Can you give an example?
Sure. So when we, so I work as a pastor in a church, and as part of that process of figuring out, like, am I called to work here? It's not, it's not the same as applying for any other job. There is a sense of, there's, in the ELCA, there's a lot of, you fill out a bunch of paperwork, you write a bunch of essays, that all goes to a committee called the candidacy committee when you first start out, and they kind of talk through this. They've you know you go through psych evaluations, background checks. There is a way of like testing, is this call a healthy calling for them. There are numerous cases of people with kind of spiritual fixations that are not necessarily um, not necessarily sacred, but are signs of mental illness. And so there's kind of a weeding out in that process, and it takes years. You go through numerous interviews and different experiences. You test it out. You kind of apprentice as a while, write more essays, do more interviews, and eventually, like as you make it along the way, then the candidacy committee says you're okay. We approve you. You've been tested. You kind of have seen that over time, over years, that God can work through you and for the good of others, and so that's confirmed by other people. It starts out as kind of a personal calling, but then it's confirmed. And then when you go to like work at a specific position, you write a bunch of essays, paperwork that goes to a church community or faith community, and they've written done a lot of thinking together as a team about what kind of spiritual leader are they yearning for, and they put all that down in writing, and then people kind of help you find each other, and you do a number of interviews, have a number of conversations, where people are all kind of slowly finding out, like, does this feel like somebody that we can trust with our spirits, and is this somebody that will help our community in the way that we feel it's being called to being helped. And so it's really a two-part conversation. It's a conversation that happens in community. And the same when I meet one-on-one with people as a spiritual director, we'll meet and just like our initial meeting is just kind of a simple get to know you. They can ask questions of me, I ask questions of them, and at the end of it, it's like, does this feel like continuing the conversation together will be fruitful for you, will be what you are yearning for? And then if that's a yes, then we schedule another session. And after a few times of meeting together, we just have a frank conversation, like, is this working? Is there something you're yearning for that you're not finding here? Is this feeding your spirit in the way that you had hoped it was? And so it's something that's not up for me to decide necessarily, but something that we figure out together.
Very cool. So, I mean, I could be wrong here, but it sounds like a core of this candidacy process is to understand if God would be able to work through you, right? Do good works through you. Can you explain that? Do you have a strategy on how to filter out, what would be God working through you versus your own agenda?
Sure. I mean, I think that takes some conversation and some wisdom. I think there's plenty of spiritual leaders that get mixed up about that, and there's probably times when I've gotten mixed up about that, and felt like there was something that only I could do, that there was a particular thing that if it was successful, that meant that God was working. If it wasn't, then that meant that God didn't. But I think there's, in the way that I kind of work here, is and figure out, like, what are the things, what are my goals, what are my tasks to do. is I first start thinking about what's the core of the why that I do what I do. What am I hoping for? And so, for instance, like with Roll for Joy, the gaming ministry thing that I do, I spent some time and crafted a mission statement, kind of talking about what do we want, what do I want with this, what do we, and the people that I invite to work along with me, what do we want to achieve out of this? And so it's using the tools of tabletop role-playing games in the spirit of play, awakening people to the fullness of their humanity and the depths of divinity within. And that's something that I have written down and put on a sheet above my computer, that I can read and kind of keep before me. And then out of that, and through my experiences in the community, we've also developed like 3 core values, that we journey together, we find the fun, and we hold on to hope. And that those then kind of ground what it is that we do. And so, like journeying together, for instance, if there's something that that I feel like is good to do, if I can't find a partner who's also shares that vision, like, oh yeah, this is a good thing to do, I would be interested in doing that together with you, then maybe it's not a good thing to do, because we're called to be in community with others. We're called to work with other people, and I feel like God shows up in community. That's part of the scripture verse where 2 or 3 are gathered, I am there. Jesus says, and so there is this like necessity of a partnership. When Jesus sends his disciples, he sends them out 2 by 2. He sends them out in not alone. When Paul writes his letters, he's always got other people working with him, traveling with him. This isn't something that we do alone, and so doing that, if there's other people that are excited about coming alongside in something, then that's something that I would lean towards doing. For example.
Yeah, I'm starting to see, and let me try to put some pieces together. So you brought up the divinity within. I mean, that's the purpose of finding the divinity within. So I guess, is the theory, if everyone has the divinity within and you're gathered and you agree that something is good and worthwhile to do, then it's highly likely that's coming from God?
It can. I mean, it's not true that any time people gather together and decide to do something that's a holy thing. Because people can come together and decide to go to war and kill a bunch of people. It's not a holy thing. People can come together and plot in a cabal to defraud a bunch of people. That's not a holy thing. So just because we make a decision in community doesn't mean that's a holy decision. I think there is a constant conversation with a number of different parts, and so there is that kind of self. What are you bringing to the table? How is this sitting in your spirit? Is this does this feel right? And trust and understanding that not everything that feels right in the moment is right for the long term. Going to the gym and exercising doesn't always feel right, or like something that I want to do, and yet it's good for my body to do in the long term, to go and do that. Eating a pint of ice cream and having a drink every night feels great, but it's not good for my body or my health to do that. So So there is some, like where's the end? Where's it? Is it right in the long term? Where does it take you? Um, and then there's like the feeling of being in conversation with other people. So is what it feels right for you feeling right for other people? Because we're born into community, we're built for community as human beings. And is that something that feels right in a group? And then there's does this feel right with our tradition? With the tradition? Does it make sense in the conversation with people who have been discerning God in their lives, across the course of history? And so that's where things like, theology comes in, writings of other people that have long since died, maybe some people that are still living, but you're not, in direct communication with, authors of books and things, talking about what's up with God. Scripture, I would say, is the same sort of thing, that it's, a record of people trying to make sense out of all of this, and that they're processing in Scripture like experiences with real holiness, but they're human words, and that's part of the tradition as well. And so you're experiencing that, and then yeah, that experience of that kind of beyond experience, what comes up in prayer, what comes up in kind of outside of that. But all of those are checking against one another. With in the Christian faith, the ultimate like norm, we would say, the ultimate like definer of what feels right is Jesus. That Jesus says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life," and that means like Jesus is our clearest picture of what it looks like for God to be in the world. And so if God wants to show up in somebody or show up in me, it's like, does it feel like Jesus? Does it seem like something that Jesus would be up to? And so, plotting, how to make a bunch of money off of Bitcoin, it doesn't really seem like a Jesus thing. So that's not a holy thing. But, figuring out how to feed a community of people that is now hungrier because their, kind of social safety net SNAP benefits have been put on hold. That feels like something Jesus might be up to.
Actually, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Hmm. Alrighty, thank you for answering my rabbit hole of questions there.
Sure.
All right, let's shift gears a bit. If someone, all right, so what advice would you give? Someone's starting down this journey. Someone's out for a run, sees the moon, is struck by something.
Mm-hmm.
How would you guide them from there?
Yeah, well, I think first, if that was somebody that came to me to share that, I'd be curious to know more, to know about the meaning that they make out of it, and kind of what is that calling up in them? How is that resonating with their experiences in the rest of their life? Then I would just invite, from that, what's the next step? What's the next conversation? Who's the next person to talk to about it? And share it with somebody. Kind of, getting that confirmation of there was this inner call. You have a conversation with somebody else, somebody that you trust, somebody that would, you can trust to kind of be open to the Spirit, to say like, well, does this sound like a call to you? And then in conversation, have that kind of confirmed in community, and going to your your spiritual tradition, your faith tradition. If you have one, then drawing on that. Is there something in that? Is there something in sometimes we see more clearly in traditions that we didn't grow up in, traditions of other people. Is there something in a tradition that's not our own that feels like it resonates with my experience, that other people have had an experience that is resonant, and finding whether it's some sort of connection there, some sort of now confirmation that there is, and then just keep having the next conversation and seeing where it leads.
That's really interesting. So you would maybe not as well. Let's just rehash what you just said. If there's a different faith tradition that would be more aligned with their experiences, you would encourage them to go down that, or to keep trying that.
Sure. Yeah, I think so. I did one of my specialties, I would say, in my studies was on kind of interreligious dialogue and interfaith relations, and so I think that there is a lot of richness that comes from having different religious traditions in conversation together, and that in my sort of theology and the way that I think about what God is up to in the world, if I truly believe that there is a God that is the God of all things and is in all things and of all things, then that doesn't exclude people that were born into a religious tradition that's different from the one that I was born into, and that there is stuff to learn and discover in being in conversation, and that it's kind of like at the deepest places, spiritual traditions kind of break down into get very, very close in kind of what they are about in the world, and it's kind of being together, living a meaningful life, finding meaning in love, and being good to people in the world around you. That there are some core things there in the deep places of faith. That then, all of the human stuff that accrues around faith traditions, all the politics, the who can be a spiritual leader, who can't, the different structures around how that goes. Like that all stuff gets added. And it's there because we're human, and it's part of being humans together. We have to figure out how to work together, and that's all a result of that. But at the core, just those like core truths, there's something very similar. And so, yeah, if there is another faith tradition that is interesting, go explore it. I mean, I've meditated in a Buddhist temple and attended services at the mosque and at the synagogue, and read the Upanishads and the Quran. So there are things to experience in other traditions that don't, it's not something to be afraid of.
It's not really the point of the show, but I'm very curious. What was? Let's just focus on the meditation part. How did that go for you? What was your experience?
Meditating in a Buddhist temple?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I had a practice of meditating before, but it was just maybe one of the longer meditation times. We sat in meditation for maybe an hour. As we sat in the room, we all kind of faced. There's one. I've done it a few times, but one time we kind of faced together in a circle. There was another time where we were actually in kind of pews and like in an old church. There's another time where we were in this Zen temple, and we were in Chicago, and we all sat and faced the wall in this little room, and so there's some like just getting comfortable with your body, getting comfortable with silence, and the Zen Roshi, I think that was his title. I don't remember. He come around and he kind of whack you with a stick on the shoulder. It was just kind of like this, not hard, but like pay attention, be present, smack. And I kind of liked it. It was just a fun little experience, and it was something like I would love to go back or like have the space to do more of that. And then we got called down and asked, one by one, asked a koan question. What's this like? And the one was a classic one. What's the sound of one hand clapping? And it was like you tried to answer. There wasn't a lot of conversation around it. It was just like you tried to make up an answer, and it was like, no, that's not it. Keep sitting. So it's just this like interesting challenge to that kind of a faith tradition where it's not an easy entry, but it's kind of like you sit for a long time, and you sit with yourself, and you kind of sit with your thoughts, and you sit and ponder about things, and eventually you start pondering, what is the sound of one hand clapping, and what does that mean? I take it to mean like we're not alone in community. We're in community. That there is no I in this. There's no one hand. That we're always together in other people.
So, from your perspective, what's the purpose of meditation? Like for you, not for a Buddhist. But...
Yeah. So I have in the Christian tradition, there's a practice called centering prayer, which is more of how I practice meditation, which is a little bit different than some other ways. So, a lot of times in meditation, you kind of focus. You focus in on stuff. You kind of let other things kind of fall away and focus in on your breath. You focus in on maybe the flame of a candle, or you focus in on a kind of absurd question like what's the sound of one hand clapping. You focus in on, maybe you meditate on a particular word or verse of scripture. You just kind of dwell and ponder it or gaze upon it. There's a series in the New York Times lately where they invite you just to sit and look at a piece of art for 10 minutes. That's a form of meditation. You're considering something. You're just kind of taking it in. You can meditate on a walk, but I think it's about inviting you into presence. Now that's one way of meditating, and it can be helpful. My more common way of meditating is centering prayer, where instead of trying to focus on something, pay attention to something, it's just an active like turning things over to God, kind of let things go. And so there is you reject no thought that comes. You retain no thought that comes. So you don't like sit and start thinking with your thoughts. You don't retain it. You just let it go, and you just return to the presence of sacredness that's around you. And so there is this sense of just turning everything over back to God. That's kind of this this just like giving away, not this like active not holding on to things, and and in that you practice that muscle or that spiritual exercise of just turning things back over to God. And if you have to do that 1,000 times in 10 minutes, like you got to do that 1,000 times in 10 minutes. It's not about like coming to some special clarity. It's just about practicing being present, and trusting in something bigger than yourself.
Hmm. Very cool. Let me ask you, is there a message or lesson you think people often miss about being called, ignoring a calling, etc.? Is that even possible? What
Is
does
it
it even mean to be called?
sure? Is it possible to ignore it? Absolutely, 100%. Um, and there are, scripture's full of stories of people who didn't want to be called and refused it. And there's, it doesn't contain the stories of all those who did actually refuse it. So it definitely is possible. I think the word about calling is one that it is definitely a Christian concept, I think, or a concept that isn't present in all of the traditions around the world, and that it's one that I think, it's never about you ultimately. Like the calling is for it when it's real. It's really not about you, because that's kind of our own egos getting in the way, and so some people feel called, and I think a lot of what they think is like they want attention, they want fame, they want to feel important, and that's not real importance. Isn't something we find when we're grasping onto it for ourselves, but I think it's something we find when we kind of give away.
To serve.
Sometimes,
Other
yeah.
times?
What's that?
What's not serving? What do you mean sometimes?
I mean, I think there are ways of I think sometimes serving can serve an individual purpose or need,
Mhm.
a need that isn't necessarily born in like this is the holy thing to do, but this is the thing that keeps me from really wrestling with something bigger. Um, I think, like, if we donate to charity, but we don't ever ask why is there a need for charity, or if we don't, um, kind of deal with some of the bigger problems, if we sort of serve and then like, okay, I've checked that box, I've done the thing, I can feel good about the rest of my life, then it's not been a holy sacred thing. It's been a thing that has eased your conscience for a little bit while leaving you mostly unchanged.
Okay, so putting two together, drop the ego, let God work through you. Don't stop.
Yeah, that's like, it's not about you, and it's about all of you. It's like there is a sense where there's always more. Um,
Mm, that's big.
Sometimes it is. It is.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate your wisdoms, your insights, your story, you sharing all that. Hopefully it helps someone.
Yeah.
Last question. Is there anything you want to share with our viewers? Maybe services you offer, how to contact you, anything you're working on, anything you want to promote?
Sure. Yeah. Well, you can find the spiritual direction and gaming stuff that I do at my website rollforjoy.org. That's the number 4, and you can. There's a blog that I haven't updated in a while, but need to. But if you are searching for someone to have a conversation about God working in your life, and want to seek out a spiritual director or want to talk to me, there's a way you can set that up there. Or you can check out the work in ministry at the church that I serve at popmn.org, which is Prince of Peace, Minnesota, popmn.org. And that's where you can see more there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining me. Hope you have a good rest of the day.
Yeah.
Don't